Hello everyone, welcome to be a Pythonista. So in the last video, we implemented some attributes, we implemented the methods, we also saw how this instance method are also bound methods or bounded methods. We also saw how to initialize the object with parameters, without parameters and all that thing. So in today's video, we will try to look at one more example and we will try to come up with their attributes and the methods and the implementation. The objective of my today's video is to make sure that we have understood the concepts which we have learned in the last video. Let's get started. I'll create a new file. So let's say pen. So what are the attributes of a pen? A pen contains a cartridge or a refill. It can have a brand. What are the methods of a pen? A pen can write. So let's try to implement it. I will start with the class pen. And the pen will have two attributes in this case. One is the cartridge and one is brand. I am giving default value here. Another one is ink cartridge. Since this is not having a default value, so I have to keep it before the keyword argument. If you see this ink cartridge here, it is also an object in itself. So what we can do is maybe we have to create another class and the object of this class will be the ink cartridge. So here you see the pen object is actually a composite object. Why composite object? Because it is having one of the attribute as some other custom object. So what could be the attributes of an ink cartridge? Let's try to define. We can have maybe the tip size. We can have ink color, volume. We can have two types of volume. One is the total volume of the cartridge. Another is how much volume is remaining or how much ink volume is remaining. So let's name it as ink volume and total volume. And the brand. We can also give some default values here if you want. So let's say I want my tip to be a 0.5 millimeter. So for the sake of simplicity, let's say one character is one volume. So if I am writing 1000 here, it means my cartridge can write 1000 characters. And let's say total volume is also 1000. As we can see here, most of the attributes which we think belongs to a pen, it actually belongs to the cartridge. For example, the tip size. Tip size is not of the pen. Tip size is of the cartridge. The volume, it's not of the pen. It is of the cartridge. That is why the cartridge itself is one of the attribute for the pen. But cartridge in itself is another object. Now let's try to define the functions. First function is the write function. And write function will also take an argument, let's say text, what we want to write. When we are actually using a pen and if we are writing something, it is the cartridge which is actually writing the characters, not the pen. We are holding the pen and by holding it, we are enabling the cartridge to write. So here also, we need to call some method on our cartridge which can write. So now we would have to define this write method in the cartridge class. Okay. Now another thing to see here is we do not directly use the refill to write something on the paper. We use pen and pen internally uses the cartridge to write. The write method of ink cartridge is more like a private method. Private method means we do not call this method directly or we do not use this method directly, like we do not use cartridge directly. We use pen. Similarly, in object-oriented programming, we have those private methods which we should not be using directly, but we can use it inside some other methods to enable our process or to enable our functionality. Here the functionality is to write, which is done by the pen, and inside the pen we are actually calling our cartridge private method. So this is the way how we define a private method in Python by prefixing it with double underscore. Please note that just by adding double underscore, it doesn't mean it has become actual private like how it happens in other languages like in C++ or Java. It is just a convention more than a rule. So you can still access the write underscore write anywhere as you want. It actually does not become private. We do not have private protected concept in Python. Everything is public. It's just a convention to let the developer know that treat this function as a private method. That's all. It's for the developer, not for the language, not for the program. So basically, my cartridge write function is abstracted. We will talk more about abstraction and all that later. But understand that here my cartridge write function is abstracted by the pen write function. As a user, I will just use the pen. I will not be bothered how that pen is enabling the cartridge to write. You are just concerned about the functionality in hand. You are not concerned how it is implemented internally. Now we can improve this write method here. For example, what will happen if the refill is empty, or what will happen if you give more characters than the volume. So let's write those conditions. So basically I am saying if the ink is not there, then just simply write no ink. Now another case is what if the volume is less than the number of characters which are there in hand. So it's like you're writing and in the middle the cartridge gets empty. So let's try to do that. So we can only write how much ever volume we have. I'm just putting it here, self dot ink volume. This is called as slicing. If you don't know about slicing, then let me know. I'm assuming that you know basics of Python before you are coming here for object-oriented programming. In case you want to cover the basics, then let me know. So what it's basically saying that if my volume is, let's say, only 50 and there are 100 characters to write, so I will write only from 0 to 50th character. And once this is done, my ink or the cartridge ink volume will become 0. And maybe we can also print a message, say ink over. Else, so else here means we have sufficient volume. We can easily write the characters. So let's just write it. I have to reduce the volume in the cartridge by the amount we have written the characters. This can be put outside the condition as a common thing. So now we can create a pen object. We can write with the pen object. So let's import the classes and create their objects, and let's see how our write function works. Pen takes an argument ink cartridge. Before we create the object of pen, we have to create a ink cartridge object. I'm creating this objects with default parameters. Now we can create our pen object. So let's say pen1 is equal to pen. I could have also created the object like say pen2, and instead of passing ink cartridge object here, I can directly call my ink cartridge class. What it will do is it will create the object and it will return that object to the to this parameter here, and then it will proceed. Either you create the object and then pass it here, or directly create the object here. Both are fine. If I'll do pen1 dot write, and pen1 dot write is actually calling my ink cartridge dot write. Let's say the text is be a Pythonista. Now what will happen? Will it actually write or will I get any error? I'm calling my pen1 dot write method, and in turn my pen1 dot write is calling my ink cartridge dot underscore underscore write method, which is a private method. So if I actually run this, then it will give me an error saying that my ink cartridge does not have the pen does not have this write attribute, but it does have it here, right? Then what's wrong? I told you double underscore makes it a private. Private in the sense you can actually access it everywhere. It's not unaccessible. But the convention to call this method changes so that you will not call it accidentally in your child classes. You will not call it accidentally if, in your composite class, or you will not be overriding it accidentally. So just to avoid those accidental calls or accidental overriding, there is a separate way of calling the private methods. So the way we call it is by providing the underscore class name and then the method name. Because I have made the change, I have to again import and reload. Okay, so it is writing now. So this is the way how we call a private method. The ink volume was 1000 units and we have written 17 characters. So the ink volume must have got decreased. Let's see that. After writing, the ink volume has decreased to 983. We can also try directly writing with the refill. Like I said, we can access the private method. It's not like it's unaccessible. What's the way to write it? Underscore class name, then underscore underscore write. It will write the text and the ink volume will be reduced. Now let's try to enhance the functionality a little more. So here, when we are writing and instead of printing this, how about raising an exception? and let the pen class handle the exception. So let's create a custom exception class. I'm just creating a dummy class just to raise a custom exception. I can actually implement a lot of things here when we are defining custom exceptions, but that's not my intention right now. I'm just introducing how we can actually create custom exception and raise it. Later on, we will go in more details about what all we can do inside this custom exception class. So here, let me raise custom exception, raise empty cartridge error, and the message should be this. And I can handle that exception here. And maybe I can ask here to either refill the cartridge or change it. So let's check this scenario. Just for the sake of simulating this particular scenario, I'm reducing the volume of cartridge. I'm just setting it to, let's say, just 10 characters or 0 characters. There's no volume. If I try to write, then I should get the exception. This exception was raised here, saying that no ink cannot write, which is caught here. I am just printing the exception, which is coming here as no ink cannot write. And then I'm giving a message like, please refill the cartridge, or please refill or change the cartridge. I can change the cartridge also. So let's say I create another cartridge of, let's say, red color. So it's like you are taking out the cartridge and putting another one, or putting another refill in the pen. I'll say pen 1 dot ink cartridge is equal to red cartridge. Okay, now if I try to write with pen 1 again, it will say writing in ink color red and writing whatever the text I have passed. So this is the beauty of object-oriented programming. You actually treat it and work with the program like you are treating and working with real life objects. Here I have just taken out a cartridge and put another one. How about the refilling? We can also do refilling of the cartridge. So I have that cartridge, the first one, the blue color one, and its volume is actually 0. Ink volume is 0. Its color is blue. Its total volume is 1000 characters. So maybe I can refill it and again put it back in the pen. So let's write refill method. While refilling, we will take the volume, how much we want to refill. So it's simple. It's like self dot ink volume is plus equal to volume. Here also we can handle some scenarios like what if we are overfilling, or what if cartridge is already full and you cannot fill it more. If the volume is equal to total volume, it means there is no more space, and we can say we can also raise exceptions if we want. This is one scenario. Another scenario is refill is empty but you are overfilling it. So let's try to do that. Let's say if this is greater than total volume, then I have to fill it till the total volume and say the message like remaining is spilled over or wasted. So let's calculate the spillover. Total volume minus volume plus self dot ink volume. And the refill is already filled now. So the ink volume will be total volume, but we can print the message that the spillover is there. Otherwise, just refill it and increase the ink volume. At this stage, already the ink volume is full. It is full. So if we try to refill it with whatever volume, let's say 50, it will say it is full, cannot refill. I have to put a elif here. Let's try to do that again. Its current volume is full. So if we try to refill it, so it is full, cannot refill. Now let's write something. Some characters I'm writing. Now the volume will be little decreased because I have written some certain characters. I can refill it here if I want. So let's say if I refill it with 50, it is refilled. If I'll again try to refill, then it will spill over. Because now my current volume plus refill volume will be more than the total volume. So ink spillover is 35 ml or minus 35. In this video, we tried to revise what we have done in our previous fan module or fan class. We created attributes, we created methods, and we called those methods. But here, the extra thing which we did is we wrote or we created an object which is having another object as its attribute. We also created a private method and saw how a private method can be called, what actually is private method. We also saw how to raise and create custom exception. So though it is like a revising of or it is just the revision of what we have done in earlier class, but I have tried to introduce 2-3 new things here. We will discuss more about all these concepts in upcoming videos. Thank you.